Welcome back, colleagues. We are still on second reading, and we are on Bill 85-36 COR as substituted. And Senator Nelson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In light of what was shared in previous discussions on this bill, we took a look at the Guam Ethics Commission testimony, and I believe the sponsor of the bill now has some amendments that he would like to proffer, so I'd like to yield my time to him.
Thank you. Before we get to the sponsor of the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the bill? Otherwise, I'm calling on the sponsor to close on the bill. If not, then sponsor, you're welcome to close on the bill.
Madam Speaker, before I give the closing, I'd like to introduce 3 amendments. One of them will fulfill basically what you brought up earlier, that certain things, and you'll find it's on the drive, and it impacts line 9, page 3. So if my colleagues will look at that, you'll find that we're going to add to amend the bill to read, I'm going to read every part of it down so that everybody, it's for the record. The Executive Director shall submit an annual fiscal year budget to the Guam Ethics Commission for its review and approval no later than January 31st of each calendar year. Number 2, the Guam Ethics Commission shall review and approve a fiscal year budget necessary to meet all of the Commission's statutory requirements and abide by all policy and procedures set forth in this title and corresponding rules and regulations. Number 3, the Guam Ethics Commission Executive shall submit to Legislature approved annual budget for each fiscal year no later than a date prescribed by the Legislature in Guam, and shall include a detailed breakdown of the funding level necessary to meet all of the Commission's statutory requirements and abide by all policy and procedures set forth in corresponding rules and regulations. Number 4, the annual Guam Ethics Commission budget appropriation approved by Legislature in Guam and signed into law by the Governor shall be exempted from the Bureau of Budget Management Research Office of the Governor of Guam Budgetary Allotment Control as generally provided in 5 Guam Code annotated and Section 1303. I think that was one critical. We wanted to make sure it was included. Number 5, the Guam Ethics Commission may draw against its respective appropriations as needed to meet its obligation in accordance with a drawdown schedule that the Guam Ethics Commission submits to the Director of Administration no later than October 31st of each fiscal year, and if the Guam Ethics Commission fails to submit its drawdown schedule by October 31st, the Director of Administrator may withhold a drawdown request for the current fiscal year until such time the Commission submits its drawdown schedule for the entire fiscal year. The Director of Administration shall not, for any reason, withhold any appropriate amount appropriated by a legislature in Guam to the Guam Ethics Commission. That's the first amendment, ma'am.
On that amendment, Senator San Augustine, can you please clarify? These sub-items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will replace the current sub-items 1, 2, 3, 4?
Stand by, let me just look at the bill. I think it was just added on page 3. No, it was to add on, to insert.
Insert.
Yeah, so they'll just flow. So right after line 9, the Commission shall appoint, it'll list all of this down. Basically, it inserts it, and it just, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it actually makes it more. And then I'd ask the legal to make the necessary administrative fix to this.
All right, so these sub-items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be added to subsection A. And then subsection B, that is currently on page 3, will remain intact.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay. On that amendment, is there anyone who'd like to speak? Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a little point of clarification, I guess, on sub-item number 5 here, that it says that the drawdown schedule that the Guam Elections Commission to the Director of the Administration no later than October 31st of each fiscal year. Is that a drawdown based on past fiscal year or the drawdown based on the current fiscal year? Because as it's reads right here, they only have 31 days to spend the money.
Would you like to, are you asking the
Yes,
sponsor to
yes,
you? Would the
Madam
sponsor yield to that question?
Madam Speaker, you're looking at number 5, am I correct? The question
Right.
was,
The October 31st of the line where it says no later than October 31st of each fiscal year. The fiscal year starts on October 1st.
so maybe
I
that
think
needs
there's
to
some
be,
language
maybe we
there
need
that's
to correct it,
missing.
October 1st instead of 31st, maybe that's,
Well, if you want to give them one more month past the fiscal year, then we can do that. However, the way this reads here, if it reads like this, it just basically means they only have 31 days to spend the money.
This is, if I may clarify, it's a deadline to submit the drawdown schedule is October 31 for that fiscal year. Right?
correct.
Right.
So, all right, Senator Blas, you have the floor.
The deadline to submit a drawdown schedule?
Yes.
I understand that, Madam Speaker, but
If we can take a minute recess and I get with legal.
Sure, 1 minute recess.
Okay?
All right. We're back in session. Senator, the sponsor of the bill had agreed to yield to the question. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker. In light of the concern of my colleague, I actually moved to that we strike out the, where it's after Director of Administration, strike out no later than October 31st of each fiscal year. So there's no confusion of when they submit it, then they have until, when you follow the continuation of that, by October, if you don't submit it by October 31st, you can't draw down at all.
Thank you. Senator Blas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I defer to the author.
Are you making the amendment?
No,
that
I defer
you
to him.
recommended? All right, so, all right. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like, wait, I'm sorry. On the amendment, we are on the San Augustine amendment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on the amendment? All right, then Senator San Augustine, would you renew
Point of
your
order, ma'am.
motion to,
Point of order, Madam Speaker. We still have to move on his motion to strike out that,
I know, but, yes, but, doesn't have,
so moved.
okay, thank you. All right, so on that motion to amend subsection 5 of the JSSA amendment to delete the words "no later than October 31 of each fiscal year." Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. And now we're back on the amendment, the JSSA amendment as amended. On that amendment, is there anyone who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, Senator San Augustine, you may close on the amendment.
Not needed to close. I can move to the other amendments, ma'am.
All right, then, on the JSSA amendment as amended.
I'd like to add Senator Talina Nelson as co-sponsor on that amendment, ma'am.
Senator TCN is there any objection to adding Senator TCN as a co-sponsor of this amendment? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. And now we're back on the JSSA and TCN amendment as amended. Are there any objections to this amendment? Seeing no objection, this amendment passes. We're back on the bill at the sponsor on his closing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two other amendments, ma'am, and to my colleagues. First one would be line 4, page 4, to just kind of clean up the bill a little bit, and it's to add or to strike on line 4, page 4. It would strike out, perform and discharge all due powers, duties, purposes, function, jurisdiction hereon on which hereafter by law may be vested in the Commission in accordance with the rules of the Commission, subject to the right and appeal of the Commission. Basically saying, manage the daily operation of the Commission, perform duties as assigned by the Commission or specified by law or rule or regulation. Being more specific now, and with the Commission dictating it all.
On the amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing no objection, amendment passes. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
One more amendment, and it's to amend on beginning on line 9, page 4. The commission, the C will be now B. And it, to strike out where it says public officer and employees and pursuant to. Line 9, page 4.
Page 3.
Page 4, the commission shall appoint an executive director who shall. Wait, I might
I
have
think
had
that's
the
on
wrong-
page 3,
Yeah, I
Senator.
think that's page 3, that's
Yes,
correct.
page 3. You're amending line 9 on page 3. On the amendment, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, Senator, you may close on the amendment.
I'll close on the bill, preferably, Madam Speaker.
All right, so on the amendment, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. We're now on the bill again. Senator, you have the floor to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues for the discussion. Bill 85-36 is going to help the Guam Ethics Commission work toward the true autonomy or independence, true independence, by allowing them to hire an executive director and outline the duties in carrying out their mandates. I'm hopeful they will be able to pass this bill and work to get them the tools necessary to adequately and without conflict receive complaints, conduct proper investigation, issue judgments free from influence from anyone. Sizus Masi. I'd like to add, we have Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munibarn as a co-sponsor, Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Tony Ada, Senator Tello, Senator Frank Blas, I know even Senator Pidu, and Senator Moylan. And if anybody else would like to join, I'd welcome that. Thank you. And we also have Senator Nelson. I wanted to make sure we included her. Thank you.
So on the amendment to add co-sponsors, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that amendment passes. On the motion, go ahead, Senator.
Madam Speaker, we can motion to send down to the voting file, third reading file.
On the motion to place Bill number 85-36 COR as substituted on the floor and further amended on the floor, are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on Bill number 89-36 COR. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to accept substitute Bill 89-36 OR, which is an act to amend Section 4703D1-2 of Article 7, Chapter 4, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to increasing the threshold of the purchase of a home from $300,000 to $350,000, and to exclude other costs imposed on the purchase of a home, and to amend Section 4703G of Article 7, Chapter 4, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to removing the 5-year limitation of adjusting the eligible transaction amount as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and introduced by myself.
On the motion to accept the substitute version of Bill number 89-36 COR as substituted on the floor, is there any objection? Seeing, Senator Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We can just have a 1-minute recess just to read over before.
Sure, 1 minute
Thank you.
recess. We're back in session on Bill number 89-36 COR as substituted on the floor. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was on a motion. We're on a motion to accept the substitute version. Are there any objections to accepting the substitute version? Hearing no objection, motion carries. We are now on Bill number 89-36 COR as substituted on the floor. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place substitute Bill 89-36 to the third reading file and like to briefly discuss the measure.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker and my colleagues. Thank you for accepting substitute Bill 89-36 COR, which was proffered after the committee received the minor technical amendments made in their legal review. The substitute version of Bill 89-36 reflects the technical changes to ensure compliance with rules on format and style. As our island and population grows, the demand for housing is rising, as well as prices of home construction. The Guam Housing Corporation asked for assistance toward increasing the threshold of the total cost of purchase for their first-time homeowner assistance program from $300,000 to $350,000, in which would allow more families to avail such assistance. Desire for home ownership have been recognized by many families, and the high total purchase costs have resulted in families becoming ineligible for assistance by Guam Housing Corporation, in which application submissions have declined. As leaders of the island of Guam, we must work toward a greater quality of life for our people, and that we can support them to reach their dreams of home ownership through the help of the first-time homeowner assistance program from Guam Housing Corporation. I look forward to the discussion on this measure and ask for affirmative support of this body to pass this bill. And I do anticipate possible amendment to increase from $350 and above. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Senator Taitui, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak briefly in support of Bill 89. Madam Speaker, I thank the author of Bill 89 for finding a way to help more of our families gain access to affordable housing. Based on a media article dated April 23, 2021, the median price of a standard alone house on Guam reached a new high of $375,000 this year. That's up to 12% from $333,500 last year, and an 82% increase from the $206,000 median price of a house on the island a decade ago. Bill 89 intends to open an additional doors for families to own their homes, particularly in the face of rising costs associated with skilled labor and home construction materials. Bill 89 recognizes that despite these higher costs, more of our working families may become eligible to apply for the first-time homeowners assistance program. Madam Speaker, Bill 89 will help build our families and island community. And for this reason, I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this measure. Thank you. And Sijus Masi.
Sijus Masi. Senator, on Bill number 89-36 as substituted, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak briefly on this bill number 89-36 COR, as sponsored by the good author from GIGO, and to share my support for this effort. As noted, Madam Speaker, the bill intends to do two things. First, to increase the threshold of the total purchase from $300,000 to $350,000, and then to also make sure that they exclude the other costs imposed to the purchase of a house. And second is to remove the 5-year provision on the eligible transactions amount adjustments. As noted by the previous speaker, this is good. This would be used to assist those under the first-time homeowners assistance program. Based on BBMR's fiscal note, this bill is administrative in nature, has no fiscal impact, and Madam Speaker, I want to say that this is a good thing for those who really want to see a true ownership, and I support the efforts and like to thank the good author from GIGO for introducing this measure on the floor as Oversight Chair of Housing. So, Sizos Masi, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of Bill number 89-36. Sina Masi.
Sinamasi. On Bill number 89-36 as substituted, Minority Leader Duenas, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I certainly rise as well in support of this very important and good measure, Bill 89-36. Madam Speaker, as you can see, over the years, there's been several adjustments, to this threshold from, I believe, starting at 200,000, then it went to 250,000. Now it's at 300,000, making the adjustment now to 350,000. And, Madam Speaker, there's no question why that has happened over the last several years, and it's simply because the cost of single-family dwellings on Guam, it just continued to rise for the reasons that my friends and other colleagues have mentioned on the floor. So I think it's also very important, as substituted with regard to this bill, that we just remove the 5-year provision. I envision now that the board, as they testified in the public hearing, the president, as well as other members, I know Ms. Guerrero also, loan administrator, basically said, essentially, if you take away the 5-year cap, the board can just adopt, by resolution and how to fluctuate with the economy. We pray someday that it might even mean that housing costs come down. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or anytime soon. But the fact of the matter is if it did for some reason, we always want to make sure, and just so that those listening today and those kind of wanting to understand what this program's about, again, it's for first-time home buyers, and it gives them this opportunity, meeting income requirements and the like, to really avail of a program that gives them up to $10,000 that can be used towards their down payment, towards closing costs, towards other costs really associated with closing a loan. We know now, Madam Speaker, that as it was before, even at the 200,000 and all the adjustments that have been made, a lot of times it is that final, any of us who've ever built a home or purchased a home, it's that final stretch, in the finishing of a home, depending on how your financing was set up, or even in the purchase, depending on how the negotiations went back and forth. A lot of times it's that last inch when you're just about there that you realize all these costs that are going to be incurred, and even sometimes over the time of construction or when you're purchasing a home, something can happen with regard to your income levels and the like, and you might be in a situation where you're so close now that you just need that one extra opportunity to get you over to qualify for that loan, and that $10,000 is really does it. A lot of times what that really is, Madam Speaker, is the closing costs. When these homeowners, receive this compensation, a lot of times it might even be in the form of a reimbursement. We all know when we either buy or build a home, a lot of times we go into it, and then when we're ready to move in, we realize, oh boy, need a new washing machine, need a dryer, need a refrigerator, a water heater wasn't part of the contract. There's so many expenses when you're finally going to, make that final move. So this program is amazing at the Department at Guam Housing Corporation. Before I left Guam Housing, Madam Speaker, I believe we had helped over 400 and some odd families, which meant if you totaled up all the houses that were closed, on in terms of this grant helping, it was over $135 million of economic activity. And a lot of those homes, Madam Speaker, would probably might not have closed, whether construction or purchase, if they didn't have this one, opportunity to get that $10,000. So I commend the author. I want to proffer one amendment, and simply because of the fact that it's what the study showed, I believe conducted by GURA, in terms of when this bill was heard, the median home cost was already at $375 or thereabouts. So as we know, more than likely the board was going to have the flexibility going forward when this bill passes to maybe make adjustments by resolution. But just for the convenience of the bill, I'd like to proffer an amendment, and hopefully my colleagues will allow me to do this without having it in writing, because it's just going to simply take this $350,000 to $375,000, so that we don't, have those individuals possibly lose out when we already know that the current, report is that median home cost is $375,000. So I believe if we give Guam Housing a clean bill as passed into law with $375,000, they would take that. And I believe there are those that would be on the waiting list now that will probably qualify closer if with this amount adopted. And then I really think the board can continue to make those decisions, because they really know in their monthly meetings how things are tracking with return to loans closing and other costs. So I humbly ask to receive this amendment, simply to change to $375,000, and look forward to hopefully getting the support of my colleagues on the floor. Jesus Masi, Madam Chair.
Jesus Masi. On the motion, notwithstanding the rules, to accept this amendment without it being in writing, is there any objection to that? If not, then on the amendment to amend $350,000 to $375,000 in two places of the bill and in the title, and to allow legal to make corrections. On that amendment, Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of that amendment, and the beauty is that the author of that amendment came from Guam Housing. He understands what's going on in the market, and we'll do whatever we need to do to take care of our people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment? On the amendment? If not, then Senator Duenas, you may close on the amendment. All right, so on the amendment, is there any objection to changing $350,000 to $375,000 throughout the bill, including the title, and to allow legal to make corrections? Any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. On the bill? On the bill? If not, then we would allow the sponsor to close on the bill. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues, because I'm almost sure everyone would like to be a co-sponsor, because this would help all our people of Guam. First-time homeowner assistance program will cater to many more families who have realized their desires to become homeowners. Matter of fact, some of them may buy the homes that are up in my area, because they're up for sale. They're all at $350,000, $375,000. We have to ensure that Guam Housing Corporation has the necessary tools to provide service to the people of Guam with the continuous changing prices of homes. If passed by this body, Substitute Bill 89-36 will allow Guam Housing Corporation to provide assistance to more families and help them attain their dreams of home ownership. I'm confident with the support we provide to Guam Housing will take the people of Guam to greater strides towards home ownership. Madam Speaker, I'd like to add, we have Senator Tello Taitagui, yourself, Madam Speaker, the Vice Speaker, the Majority Leader, Senator Nelson, Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Paris. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at everybody's hands, ma'am, that we add everybody to this bill as co-sponsor, and we pass these unanimously, and we help the people of Guam. Thank you.
All right, on that motion to add co-sponsors, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. On the bill, on the motion to send Bill number 89-36 COR as substituted on the floor and amended on the floor, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on Bill number 90-36 COR. Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to place Bill 9036 COR, which is an act to amend subsection 5248 of Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated. It's relative to requiring monthly reports and justification summaries when purchases are made through a sole source or emergency procurement process. And I'd like to move that third reading file for discussion, Madam Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So Bill 9036 is about enhancing transparency. And in this case, specifically, when the government starts seeking sole source or emergency procurement. I'm certain that we can all recall that genesis of this legislation was when a couple of months ago we all learned of several expenditures pursued via sole source and emergency procurement in 2020, and particularly by utilizing the Federal CARES Act. So I'm sure that many of these expenses were justified, but considering the realities that when it comes to spending federal funds, this body, the people's body, has basically no say in the process. In 2020, the CARES Act brought over $117 million. In 2021, this number exceeds over 500 some million. And the current law mandates that the General Service Agency provides us a report on sole source or emergency expenditures on an annual basis. This is why we only learned in March that millions were expended on such procurement in 2020. Hence, the reasons behind the introduction of Bill 9036. So if we sit and do nothing come March 2022, we'll be wondering of how 30 million or 50 million or maybe even 100 million was spent on sole source contracts in 2021. If we pass this measure and mandate monthly reports, we would know in July of 2021 what was expended in June of 2021. And thus, this body can question those expenses. While we cannot prevent the expenditures of federal funds, we can bring into light how these funds are being spent. The objective of requiring monthly reports versus annual reports is that if we get the information more frequently, it should reduce questionable spending when it comes to the sole source or emergency procurement. Plus, this measure mandates a section in the report to justify why the procurement was a sole source or deemed an emergency. I've spoken to GSA, and a monthly report with the additional fields can be provided. It's a simple field to include on the spreadsheet. Bill 9036 is about enhancing transparency when it comes to spending. And with federal funds now in the government's bank account, we have over 500 and some million reasons why to pass this bill. Hence, I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 90-36, is there any senator who would like to be recognized? Bill number 90-36. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
This is Mossy, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this legislation. It was, GSA did support it. They provided testimony in support of this bill. And in looking at the recent legislation that was passed last term regarding procurement reform for emergency procurement, which requires that agencies that are availing themselves of emergency procurement has to have a public hearing 30 days before the extension date. So last term, we extended the procurement to take place over a period of 90 days. And prior to the expiration of those 90 days, the agencies had to, should they want to extend the emergency procurement, they would have to have a public hearing on why they were going to extend emergency procurement. And I think that what this bill would do, it would ensure that we are on top of things and that every month we receive a report of any kind of new procurement, especially now with the American Rescue Plan, on the horizon. We would see any new emergency procurements, and we could also keep tabs on when these agencies would need to have the public hearing should they determine that the emergency procurement should be extended. So rather than wait quarterly, I know there were some suggestions during the public hearing about having quarterly reports versus monthly reports. I think the monthly reports will be much more effective in making sure that the emergency procurement is being done properly. And again, GSA did support it. And there was also some mention as far as additional financial support, which would, now that we're in the budget cycle, this is the opportune time to register what the amounts would be. Perhaps that could be fleshed out a little bit more, but I do rise in support of this legislation, or this bill. Situas Masi.
Situas Masi. On the bill, Bill number 90, Senator San Augustine, you're recognized, and then the Minority Leader, Duenas.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the bill, but I'm just looking at it, and on the top it says monthly, but then in the bill it says annual. I'm just concerned you got monthly on top, semi-annual on the bottom, and I wanted to, notwithstanding the House rules, change the annual part to semi-annual, only because it takes a whole year to find a report, and sometimes if we want monthly, we're lucky if we get it in 6 months. So if we do it in 6 months, maybe we'll get closer to getting the report. And I know that's been our issue in the previous years, and I just want to make sure because when we're doing the budget, we're doing budgets 6 months out. So if we know what's going on, then we know what we're dealing with when we're looking at the budget, this coming budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator, could you please be specific which line you want changed?
That'll be line 3. It's kind of odd because when I'm reading the bill, it talks about legislative findings and intent, then it doesn't say anything else. It doesn't really tell us when they're going to give us a report. But the subject of the bill says monthly.
All right,
So
Senator,
that's why I'm thrown off.
all right, we're going to take a 1-minute recess. We're back in from recess. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I will draw my comment. I support the bill. I finally can see now the other pages. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the bill, Minority Leader Duenas, you are recognized.
Situas Masi, Madam Speaker, and I certainly rise in full support of Bill 9036. And I want to thank the author, Senator Moylan. This is very timely legislation. As you know, Madam Speaker, there was a lot of work done by yourself and others, concerned members of this legislature, to really not second guess particularly, but to have the accountability and the transparency with regard to getting information on how funds were being spent, particularly under the CARES Act, and then now going into, the rescue plan. I think this is absolutely appropriate. for the legislature. And I'm glad GSA came down and was in favor of it. I know that when we did receive the last report, some of us were kind of joking, maybe we would put an amendment into this bill in terms of formatting, because I sat down with several of my colleagues and we were turning electronic records left, right, trying to align and really trying to get a little bit more clear representation of what the purchases were. I think that what's really important, not just the idea of monthly requirements, Madam Speaker, but basically the process under which the justification and they arrived at the purposes for seeing fit to go through with emergency procurement. And so I think the author's done good work here. I think it's something that the legislature, I've seen mandated reports before. I mean, I'm not going to question, but I think this one really rises to the top, particularly in the times that we're in right now, and with some of the concerns that we heard from our folks out in the general public as well, when a lot of discussion was ongoing about purchases and the like. So I think it's a great bill, and I think it's something that this legislature will look forward to receiving those reports and going through them to ensure that we're working together with all of the agencies, with GSA, with those requiring purchases, and just putting that extra layer of accountability into the system. So once again, Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I do definitely support this measure.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 90-36, Senator Ada, you have the floor, and then Senator Taitakui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in full support of Bill 90-36. I think when we talk about emergency procurement or even sole source procurement, that's exactly what it is. It's taken by an emergency or sole source, that there is only true one source of getting the items. And I think this bill comes timely, as the previous speaker had said, that as we move forward with the Recovery Act now, that we want to ensure that all the procurements that are made are above board, and that we can see that where the funds are being spent, in addition to that the procurement is done in a just and proper way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitakui, on the bill, you are recognized.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this measure. I'm pretty sure all of us was pretty taken back with some of the procurement that was, or sole sourcing that was provided to us. I think, I can't remember how many, it's about 123 or something like that of these report that was given to us. And unfortunately, it wasn't itemized, and that was one of the issues too. What was exactly was it paid for? It went to this agency, but didn't really give a full explanation on the spending of this money. The legislation also may have some issues with GSA, according to the public hearing. They were talking about this would require more work, and considering that the ARP money that's coming in, which will require procurement, is going to take up a lot of these manpower at GSA. Now that's $603 million that is coming into our economy. And GSA is going to have to go through every single one of those when it comes to procurement if it reaches a certain amount of money. So this is going to be a lot of work onto GSA, but I think there's a reporting requirement anyways every monthly that they put together electronically that could provide us that information. Well, that's good when it comes to GSA and these agencies. But what about the autonomous agencies? Where's our eyes on that with regards to sole sourcing from autonomous agencies? Madam Speaker, I spoke with the good chair, the oversight chair on procurement, and we both agree that, there needs to be some kind of mechanism to not just the regular line agencies, but our autonomous agencies should be accounted for too as well. So, Madam Speaker, we have an amendment to the legislation. It's being drafted right now regarding the autonomous agencies and bringing them into fold. The second one, too, Madam Speaker, is my concern with regards to, a report versus a summary. In the legislation, it says on page 2, line 23, a summary justifying how the procurement transaction was determined to be sole source procurement or emergency procurement pursuant to this chapter. A summary justifying, why is it a summary? We should be getting a full-fledged report. So this is something that needs to be addressed as well. So, Madam Speaker, I ask your indulgence and my colleagues' indulgence to just give us a few minutes to get this legislation out this amendment out, and also to address the section that I was speaking about, a summary instead of a report, and just to find out through legal if it's the same perspective, because I would rather see a report and not a summary where itemized areas are given to us to review too as well. If I may, Madam Speaker.
All right, 2-minute recess. We're back in session on Bill number 90-36 COR after a recess. Senator Teitzigui, you had the floor at that time. If you could all refresh your drives, your floor amendment drives. Thank you. Senator Teitzigui.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for allowing this opportunity for us to kind of broaden this summary report that is going to be provided to us. You know, there's a lot of funding going out there, Madam Speaker, a lot of funding, not just on this 603 ARP money that's coming in, but there are going to be a lot of grants that are coming in. DOE alone has about 200, I think the OFB chair, about $270-something million going to Department of Education alone. Now, we all know that in this section here, prior to my amendment, where it's in section 2, actually, 5248, it talks about procurement actions taken under 5214 and 5215. In this chapter, it talks first of 5214 as sole sourcing. And then in 5215, it talks about it in an emergency procurement scenario. Now, we all know through the executive orders, we're in an emergency state right now. We're not always going to be in this state, Madam Speaker. You know, knock on wood, we're not going to always be in this state. But while we're there in this situation, I think it's prudent upon us, especially with all this federal money coming in, to provide information to this body on a monthly basis. In some areas, people have talked about doing this quarterly or, you know, semi-annually. But you got to remember, this is only being done during emergency time, during emergencies. So once we are out of the state of emergency, then this won't apply. So, Madam Speaker, what I'd like to do, and as many of us know that some of these agencies, like I just said, Department of Education, they receive about $278 million, give or take, alone on spending. And I think this body needs to know where that money is going, especially when budget time comes and where we're going to appropriate it. So my amendment, Madam Speaker and colleagues, is on line 15 to 18, page 2, to amend section 2 of the bill to read, A, contents of record, the Chief Procurement Officer, the Director of Public Works, and this is where the amendment comes into play, or the Department of Education, comma, the Guam Community College, the University of Guam, and all autonomous agencies and public corporations, comma. So it incorporates those other entities of the government of Guam. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized on the amendment? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And during that recess, I did have an opportunity to reach out to GCC, and they're in support of it. President Okada is in support of this, and she basically says they don't have any emergency sole source procurements. And I think what this amendment would do, would definitely shine a light on procurements that would demand the premium price. And here we're approaching the budget cycle, and we're looking to, leverage or better use government dollars more efficiently and effectively. And it's good to know that there are entities out there, the autonomous entities that are very dollar conscious, such as GCC, and we want to promote, more efficient use of government funds by increasing the transparency. So I do support this amendment in regards to shining a light on sole source and emergency procurements. But I would like to make sure that we're catching everything. So I know it states the educational institutions, such as GCC, Department of Education, and University of Guam. There might be other agencies that might not be captured by autonomous and public corporations. So I just want to have a quick recess just to verify this. because there are other agencies such as the Airport Authority, GVB, GMH, and others. I just want to verify that this is going to capture all entities, government entities.
All right, 1 minute recess, please, as quick as we can.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. My apologies. We're back in session. We're back on the floor amendment by Senator Taitegui. Senator Perez, you had the floor for the recess.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So there may be perhaps additional language, or I would like to amend the amendment. I know there may be some, during consultation, there may have been some agencies that were left out. Perhaps after the Director, Chief Procurement Officer, the Director of Public Works, perhaps the head of an agency utilizing this section would encompass everything. So that would include all agencies, I think autonomous, semi-autonomous, and public corporations. So the language that I would like to add, or basically strike the individual, so strike the Department of Education, strike the specific entities, and put in language saying, or head of an agency utilizing this section. So I don't have any amendment written at this moment.
Right, so the motion is to amend this amendment by striking the words, "or the Department of Education, the Guam Community College, the University of Guam," and then to add after, "and all autonomous agencies and public corporations," or the words, "or heads of agencies utilizing this section."
Yes.
The clerk got that?
And I would like to allow legal to make any corrections.
All right, is there any objection to doing that without it being in writing? If not, then we will proceed. The amendment by Senator Perez to this, Senator Taitagui's amendment is to strike the words, "or the Department of Education, the Guam Community College, the University of Guam," and to add after the word corporations, the words, "or heads of agencies utilizing this section." On that amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? If not, then Senator Perez, would you like to close on that amendment? On the amendment, is there any objection to the Perez amendment to the Taitagui amendment? If not, any objection? Seeing no objection, motion passes. So on the amendment, Taitagui and Perez amendment as amended, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? If not, then Senator Taitagui, you may close on your amendment.
Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the good Oversight Chair of Procurement for the assistance needed to make this a stronger piece of legislation, and as a co-sponsor of the amendment. Other than that, Madam Speaker, I think that last amendment to the amendment will pretty much cover everything. We were trying to put our heads around this to find out, to make sure that we don't leave anybody out. You know, it's fair across the board. Everybody has that same requirement. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there any objection to the Perez-Taitagui amendment? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. We're on the bill. But Senator Brown, you are recognized on the bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I certainly do rise in support of Bill 90. You know, about a month and a half ago, when we actually received a 27-page listing from GSA with regards to the numbers of emergency procurements and sole source procurements, I'm sure many of us had raised our eyebrows. Understandably, I mean, this past year in 2020, of course, going through this pandemic, I'm sure there were a number of things the government had to adjust and respond to address those concerns, and certainly to address the health and safety of our community. I don't think anyone's going to argue that or the need for that. But looking over the list, and again, you know, it wasn't very informative. As you noted, Madam Speaker, publicly, there's very little information provided. For example, you have the name of a company, perhaps a general idea, maybe referencing what type of service is being provided, and the amounts. You know, we kind of look at, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of the procurement process in the government of Guam, I think this whole 127, you know, checkpoint you have to go through to do procurement is mind-boggling to me sometimes, because sometimes I see it as a mechanism that prevents the government from getting the services and supplies that it needs to operate, and then it gets accused of being slow in its response to the public. But at the same time, the government of Guam, probably aside from the military here, is probably the single largest business in town that procures services and procures goods from the private sector. Probably no single, I don't know, maybe some of our larger commercial businesses, but probably I'd gauge fairly good that it'd be the government of Guam that would be providing these goods and, you know, securing these goods and services in the community. What this report at the end of the year does not provide us really is any gauge or ability to understand what type of procurement was actually granted, and was the sole source, even though this falls under the head of GSA, almost unilaterally falls under the authority of the head of GSA to determine or approve these sole source or emergency procurements. These are what we should look at as the exception to procurement in government. And the list was quite long. I certainly look forward to when we do have the oversight hearing. Perhaps it would give us better insight with regards to why we had such a large amount. Some of the services, at least again, just cursorily looking at the list, it raises questions. Because if we're going to believe certain services or goods are be provided by that company, we also know there are other companies on Guam that provide those goods and services. Were they aware of it? Were they notified? Were they even checked to find out could they provide those goods and could they provide those services within the timeline? Of course, the emergency procurement, there are timelines under which, the company that receives that, the contract to procure, they have to provide those goods or services within a very set timeline. Then sole source, some of the sole source listings, again, it's just a cursed look at the listing, because the listing was quite long. I mean, even though I used my reading glasses, I had a hard time reading it. I had a hard time tracking across the page because it was so small to read. My view very much in government is that we should ensure that as much light is shed, particularly on how money is spent in the government, because maybe sometimes it is the root of all evil sometimes. Unfortunately, we'd like to think people that are in public positions do the right thing and make the right decisions. That's not always the case, and unfortunately, time and time again, we get reminded that these things do happen. That's why we put all these requirements in place to prevent some people from doing what comes naturally to them, and naturally in not a very good way. I'd like to think that all the government officials that are in charge of doing procurements are doing things properly. I'd like to think that, connects in the government aren't letting other people know that are related to them, who are friends and family, what contracts are coming up so that they can bid for them. I'd like to think that, but, I don't think that's always the case. That's why we put all these requirements in place, to ensure that public funds are not, are not abused and are not misused. Because in some cases, we may just be talking smaller contracts that are $1,000 here or there. We're talking contracts that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a number of cases, we're talking about contracts that are millions of dollars. And as you look at that list of 27 pages, there's quite a few there that are, the zeros, quite a few zeros following those procurements. So we have a responsibility and an obligation, not so much to provide this information so the Guam Legislature can sit down and look at it every month, but so the people of Guam can look at it anytime they want to know what it is their government is procuring and for what purpose, and who it's being procured from. Because I'll tell you, if I had a different life and wasn't in public office, man, maybe I should, contract with the government of Guam. It's unfortunate we need to do this, but this is the reality of where we're at. And as I mentioned earlier, I look forward to the oversight hearing because I'm curious to get the explanation. Contrary to my colleagues, some of my colleagues mentioned earlier that GSA was in support of this bill. I attended the same public hearing. That's not the impression I got at all. I kind of got resistance. I kind of got, oh, that's a lot more work. It's going to take a lot more work for us to provide, these individual explanations that you're asking for. Because some of the things I looked at, in my naked eye looking at it, I said, oh my gosh, really? This is the only company on Guam that provides this service? They got a sole source contract. And in all fairness to other businesses out there that can provide these types of goods for services, were they even aware? Were they even notified? Were they even contacted the government, as looking for this type of service or this type of commodity? Of course, because in doing that, we'd like to think, that the private competition is going to bring the cost down, even though I know through government procurement, sad realities, that's not always the case. But that's the hope of what we want to be able to accomplish. We want to be able to acquire goods and services and ensure that's being done fair and evenly. But when you have this much sole source procurement and this much emergency procurement, as I mentioned earlier, maybe it's just the fluke of the circumstances past year with the pandemic. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I can't measure this with information of what happened the year before or 5 years ago or what's going to happen 5 years from now. But I think requiring greater accountability with what GSA is procuring, because they are, at least for the main government of Guam and the line agencies, they're the main entity that does these type of procurements. We want to ensure it's being done properly. When you run a department or agency, you have to jump all these hoops, particularly if you have to do an emergency procurement. You have to be able to have a very specific justification and a declaration as to why you are pursuing an emergency procurement. Because again, this is not looked at as the standard, it's the exception. Also in sole source procurement, you have to have a written justification as the head of an agency that you have to sign to determine and publicly announce to GSA and formally announce it as to why this particular company is the only company in town that can provide you either, again, the service or the commodity that you're procuring. Again, these are the exceptions to the regular procurement rules. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll find out in the course of this upcoming hope. I look forward to the oversight hearing. Maybe those questions can be answered. Maybe they're all legitimate. But this information should be readily available. In the current format that these reports are provided to the Guam Legislature are not very helpful, because you really don't have a clear explanation as to why and how that determination was made. I mean, the response from GSA is going to require a lot more time and effort to provide that. And I ask the question, why? If you have a procurement file, those documents, those written justifications, those declarations should be in that file. I don't see any reason why that can't be produced, but I guess those are questions we need to ask and have answered, because it does raise the question. Otherwise, I can take my little pencil and I can connect, oh, look who got this contract. Oh, I can see who's connected here, either familiar, friend, or political supporter. And that really shouldn't be the basis. We shouldn't even be looking at that. That shouldn't even exist. But, it does. I'm sure we'll look at that list of 27 pages. I'm sure we can connect some of those dots. And great if it's a legitimate procurement, because we do have a lot of hardworking businesses out there. If it's a legitimate procurement and it's done properly, more power to everyone involved. If it's not, if it's because someone has inside information, the government needs to procure something, hey, no problem, I got you covered, or hey, I'm going to change my whole business operation so I can procure something that you need, so I can make sure I get that $1 million contract. Let's not kid ourselves, that happens in government. I think that's the kind of thing we don't want to see continue to happen in government, especially when we're dealing with public money. Because I certainly wouldn't want to think that during a time of pandemic, a time of need in our community, that anyone's going to want to take advantage of that to improperly profit from an unfortunate circumstance that our people are in. If it's done above board, if there's proper justifications under Guam law, then wonderful. I think that's what we always want to see. So certainly putting this requirement to have regularly updated reports on a monthly basis allows that type of review, not just by the Guam Legislature, but by the public in general, and also other competitors within the private sector, so that they can also be known, gee, I don't know, did they contact me or not? Was I aware of this procurement or not? So that these type of exemptions, should they be pursued, have to be done so very carefully, so that it's not abused. Especially right now, Madam Speaker, we have a lot of money floating around. A lot of federal money's floating around in the air. And I think we want to make sure, even though it's not coming out of our direct pocket, it's coming out of Uncle Sam's pocket, but I think we want to make sure that money's properly spent and that it goes to the intended purpose. And that when we go through the procurement process, we're ensuring that that money goes to where it needs to go to benefit the people that it should benefit, and not simply in the pockets of others that may want to take advantage of the government circumstance or their connect to the government. So with that, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, and I certainly hope our colleagues also support it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 90-36, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized? All right, we're going to take a 1-minute recess. Thank you, colleagues. We're back in session after the recess. Senator Blas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to proffer an amendment to this bill. It's actually going to be found on line 23, page 2. The amendment was uploaded. And what this amendment will basically do is, like I said, on line 23, page 2, is now have that number 4 read a report detailing justification as to why the procurement transaction was determined to be a sole source procurement or an emerging procurement, and the funding source used pursuant to this chapter.
Thank you. The amendment's been uploaded. On the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Senator Taitigui on the amendment.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity. And as well, I kind of mentioned that when I started speaking on the bill before proffering my amendment, and totally forgot to address this concern that I had with this bill. Madam Speaker, if I may, I'd just like to say, read into the record what summary, in the definition of summary is. A brief statement or account of the main points of something. Madam Speaker, I think we're going to need a little bit more than a brief or some points of something. And I think this amendment by the good author is one that will do that, to provide us a little bit more information. And I greatly appreciate the amendment being made today by the good author. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment? On the amendment, if there's no one else who would like to be recognized, Senator Blas, you may close on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, just so that I can reiterate this bill is going to make the report that we're asking for them to provide monthly a more succinct and a more complete, information is more complete so that we can make the determination and there's true transparency in what that procurement is. Madam Speaker, before I close, I'd like to also make a motion to include as co-sponsors to this amendment Senator Stella Taitigui and Senator Joseph Augustine.
On the amendment to add the co-sponsors, Senator Taitigui and San Augustine, is there any objection to that amendment, to the amendment? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. On the original amendment by Senator Blas, Taitigui, and San Augustine, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. On the bill, on Bill number 90, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? If not, then Senator Moylan, you may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the discussion and the amendments on the bill. Madam Speaker, I just wish to close by adding some co-sponsors to the bill, starting Senator Sabina Perez, yourself, Madam Speaker, Senator Brown, Senator Ada, Senator Duenas, Senator Frank Blas, Senator Joseph Augustine, and Senator Tello Taitigui. I also then wish to say thank you very much for the discussion.
Let's move on that amendment. And on the amendment to add co-sponsors, is there any objection to that amendment? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. Please proceed, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to move Bill 9036 as amended to third reading.
On the motion to move the bill to third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are back. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I ask that motion to have the body reconsider the action taken on Substitute Bill 89-36 Move a motion. Notwithstanding the House rules?
All right, there's a motion notwithstanding the House rules to reconsider the actions on substitute bill number 89-36 COR as amended on the floor. Is there any objection to the reconsideration? Seeing no objection, we are back. We will reconsider bill number 89-36 COR. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, slipped by, I guess, with the positive response. An amendment on, it's on the device. It's just to amend the effective date. It reads on line 9, page 2, the effective date upon enactment and shall be retro to January 1st, 2020. The reason for this is that I was advised by the board, by the Guam Housing, that there are some applicants that because of the marketing drive, they couldn't even qualify. And in order for them to be reconsidered by the board, and the board said they will look into it, it becomes on them. It's not on us. It's just bringing it back to January 2020 during the pandemic time, and then they'll take a look and consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, Senator San Augustine, would you like to close on the amendment?
No, thank you. Just if we could
All
send it
right,
to
so on
third
the
reading.
amendment, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion passes.
And if we can send it to the voting file,
On
ma'am?
the motion to place substitute bill number 89-36 COR as amended on the floor and further amended, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion passes. We are now on bill number we're on resolution number 56-36. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, if I may just move to set aside Resolution 56-36. Still waiting for additional information, working with bipartisan support on a proposed amendment, so move to set it aside.
All right, on the motion to set it aside, resolution number 56-36, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, resolution number 56-36 is set aside. We are now on bill number 102-36 COR. Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to place Bill number 102-36, an act to add a new subsection 8103D, 8103.1, and 8107D, all of Chapter 8, and to amend Section 43122A of Article 1, Chapter 43, all of Title V Guam Code annotated relative to increasing public access to information on government meetings, deliberations, and decision-making by requiring broadcasting of public meetings and notice of agenda items. I'd also like to make a motion to further discuss Bill 102.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. A number of years ago, I added an amendment to the Sunshine Act, Madam Speaker, that became law that put in place the 5-day and 2-day public notice that's required when public meetings are occurring so that members of our public, our people of which we represent in our community, would be informed on the activities of their government, be it the bills or resolutions that are here at the Guam Legislature, or any actions that are taking place within our government commissions and boards. Primarily because at the time I noticed that we really were not going out of our way to ensure that the public was informed. And I think as time has gone on, we realize the importance of ensuring that, and reminding ourselves also that while we've been elected to our respective capacities, or we have those that have been appointed to boards that have been confirmed by the legislature, or other elected positions such as the CCU that I was also involved in supporting and creating, that the people we represent should know what it is we're doing with their resources, and more importantly sometimes what we're doing with their money. And while time has gone on, we still feel a need that we need to expand that requirement. We need to ensure more awareness, especially now at a time when technology, and certainly most recently as a result of this unfortunate circumstance with this pandemic, We found very much so how we have the capacity in greater ways than we ever did before to keep the public informed. And so one of the things that this bill does require is that meetings, as with the Guam Legislature, I mean, even back in the day, gosh, 30 years ago, the legislature was able to, probably not as sophisticated a system as we have now, but we were able to televise our public hearings and our sessions. We'd like to see the same thing for public meetings of boards and commissions as well, where decisions are made on how that department or agency is supposed to run, how policy is determined, and certainly how resources are expended within these departments and agencies within the government of Guam. So that's certainly one of the things that this particular bill will require and add on to the process. In addition, we want to ensure that not just the broadcasting aspect, but we also are finding out, and I've noticed this as I look through the paper and I see other notices, department or agencies are not really announcing what they're doing. They might meet the public notice requirement by putting, in our little article in the paper that says, this department or agency is meeting at this day and time. Of course, we have the ADA requirement, so they'll include that information. And that's pretty much it, without providing the public an opportunity to know what it is that's being discussed or what is on the agenda. We have some departments that are very good about listing the agenda so people know. For example, if you go to the PUC hearing, PUC will publish what's on their agenda so that people know which, in most cases they're reviewing a rate issue with an autonomous agency. They'll list that out. But other department or agencies don't list anything other than the fact that they're simply meeting. And it's really incumbent upon the public to go through the effort of finding out, maybe calling or getting online and seeing what's on the agenda. And really, I think we should make every effort, including the Guam Legislature. The Guam Legislature is in violation at times of its own public notice requirements, even though we do allow in the current law for not just publishing in a paper, but also through television or radio. I've yet to see a television or radio announcement that lists out the bills and resolutions that are being heard in the Guam Legislature. We simply show our media notices when we put our packets together, but in most cases, the public being informed on what's being discussed or deliberated really isn't provided. There's only a few senators here that actually make that effort to publish notices in the paper. I mean, even the courts use the paper. I mean, now we have a couple, you can pick one or the other as long as they have a certain number of readership. But to use that as a means of formal notification if they're not able to do it individually. So even ourselves, this is still something that we need to work on to ensure that the public is aware, because I've run into people who said, I didn't know a hearing was held on that bill. So that's something we definitely need to look at, is ensuring that we have that information out there for the public to be aware of. And then most importantly, while we often pass legislation to require a whole bunch of things, we really don't have a mechanism to enforce the legislation that we're passing and putting in place to ensure a certain outcome occurs. And so I put a provision here also that if these requirements are not met, then any transaction that occurs during that meeting is null and void. So that it was sure that department and agencies make that extra effort to keep the public informed. And this is all, to me, very important. There's very much a need to do it. I think we have a public expectation that our people should be kept informed. As you know, there's current laws in place right now that department and agencies are supposed to be posting on the government website their announcement of their meetings with this information. I recently looked at that website. Guam EPA published something like, a month and a half ago. That was the most recent listing I saw. So we definitely need to come up to speed. And while we've discussed this, others say, they're not complying. And well, that's nice, but the law requires that they comply. And there's no reason as a government why we cannot prioritize keeping the public informed. If they have an interest in a certain department or agency, or even in the Guam Legislature, if there's legislation they have an interest in tracking, following, wanting to testify on, or simply just listen into, they should have that opportunity to be aware that it's even happening. Because back in the old days, and those old days weren't that long ago, there was a tendency to just move things without the public even being aware that it happened. Just at a drop of a hat, we want to motion that bill on the agenda. We did it here in the Guam Legislature. People didn't know what was going on until after the fact. And I just think in this day and age, with the capabilities that we have, yes, government agencies may argue, it's going to require us a lot more time and effort to put this into place. It's going to require us more money to publish our notices. Well, I think of all the things we spend money on, putting that little extra effort, especially with the current technological resources that are available, is a more important investment than probably anything else that a government agency can do. That should be prioritized. Because I think the more light you shed on an issue, the more awareness the public knows about what's happening with their own government, least opportunity for funny business to happen, least opportunity for corruption to grow. And more engagement, which more importantly is what I would like to see, is more awareness and engagement of our public of what it is their government is doing. And also their ability with their own eyes. They don't have to look at the information filter. They simply can come to the determination on their own whether or not their government, department, and agencies are performing in the way that they would like to see, especially where very important decisions are made that also affect the government operations and the finances of the people. So with that, Madam Speaker, I certainly hope to receive the support of my colleagues as we continue to expand greater engagement and greater awareness of our public on their very own government. With that, thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 102.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill 102, Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak on 102-36 COR. Madam Speaker, as I look at the intent, this bill intends to increase public access to information on government meetings, deliberations, and decision-making by requiring broadcasting of public meetings and notices on the agenda items. This bill does, though, exempt executive sessions and other meetings authorized by law will remain close to the public, which is some of that's already in statute. I will note for the record as the Oversight Chair on public broadcasting that the fiscal note states that an estimated cost impact cannot be determined as contingent on whether government agencies have existing resource capacities for airtime for broadcasting of meetings on designated government channels. I will note for the record that PBS states that their rate card is $500 for 30 minutes and $1,000 for 1 hour during the daytime. Rate increases for prime time. However, PBS is obligated to the public broadcasting system programming. In addition to this, Madam Speaker, I want to note that the 5-day and the 48-hour notice requirement for regular and special meetings in Chapter 8, Title 5 GCA boards and commissions must also submit agenda items and meeting minutes no later than 15 days after the end of the meeting. So I have no objections to this, Madam Speaker, as it does advocate for more accountability and transparency. As you know, in all the terms that this legislature has always been an advocate for transparency and making sure that our community knows what's happening, especially here in session floor. And as I noted earlier, that the fiscal report has been submitted for the record. So thank you, Madam Speaker. I promise real brief. Sinamasi, and I hope that my colleagues support the efforts also. Thank you.
Thank you. On Bill number 102-36, is there any Senator Taitsigui, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to register brief remarks in full support of Bill 102. And I want to thank our colleague, Senator Brown, for allowing myself to be a co-sponsor to this legislation, but most especially for championing this and other measures to help bring us closer to building and maintaining public trust throughout our government of Guam. I also appreciate comments offered by Mr. Adrian Gogui in favor of Bill 102. And I respect his perspective as a community advocate and equally important, a citizen and taxpayer. In testimony submitted to the legislature, Mr. Gogui wrote that transparency of our government agencies and access to regular and special meetings of public agencies and their records are critical for ensuring we, the people, have absolute confidence and trust in our government. Madam Speaker, by requiring government agencies to broadcast regular and special meetings, Bill 102 makes it clear that there is no room, no opportunity for government employees, including decision makers, to conduct public business behind closed doors, in secret, or any other matter which limits taxpayers from viewing officials' proceedings. Bill 102 ensures that agenda items for consideration will be made public, and they'll be made public well in advance for a regular or special meeting. Madam Speaker, whether it's a decision involving salary adjustments for agency leaders or legislation prioritizing the expenditure of public resources, the passage of Bill 102 is critical to keeping taxpayers informed and to protecting against special interests and illegal activity across the government of Guam. For this reason, Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to please join me in supporting Bill 102, and that we all send a very clear message to agencies, leaders, that taxpayers must and will have access to deliberations and decisions made during public hearings. Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Taitakwi. On the main motion, Speaker Teresa Loy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of this bill, and I want to thank the author for allowing me to be a co-sponsor. I very much support the three main purposes of the bill. One is that all meetings of government meetings will be live streamed, and that is, I think as we adjust to, we had to adjust during the pandemic. We have seen that the government can adjust and that there's actually a huge benefit to it, and that the public can watch real time what is going on. And as opposed to going back later and listening to recordings, they can watch real time. And so that, I think, is very helpful. It has been very helpful to me as a senator to listen to some of these meetings real time if I cannot attend in person. And I think the more that the public is able to hear, the more, the goal, of course, with open government is to get public input, and so that we will be able to get public input if the more they hear, the more they see that they can participate. Of course, the second and third parts of the bill are to make sure that the public notice of the agenda, and not just the notice of a meeting is going to occur, but the agenda of the meeting is going to be published. And this is a big thing, and I've tried to do this with my committee by publishing these agendas in the newspaper. And this is very helpful. And at the public hearing, I pointed out the example of the Guam Land Use Commission. They're very, I think because they were challenged years ago, and one of their actions, at least one, was voided because they did not specifically publish that agenda item, right? So the determination was that they had not given public notice to everyone that that one particular agenda item was going to be, taken up at that meeting. And so, of course, anyone who's interested in that particular agenda item, they want to know when that's going to be heard. And I do this a lot myself. I look at the agendas and see, if the issue I'm concerned about is on the agenda or not. I ask many of my oversight agencies to send me all their agendas for their meetings so that I can determine, if there's anything I wanted to tune into or not, or to attend in person, and make that decision in advance. So I'm very much in support that notices will be published. I think we have learned a lot here at the legislature that, so we've been trying to live stream our sessions and our public hearings, for several years now, and that has been, I have heard from people, out in the public, they very much seem to appreciate that. They very much appreciate seeing in real time what is going on here, hearing our deliberations and how we are coming to the decisions, as opposed to just reading the conclusion in the newspaper. Sometimes it's, they like to hear more. And so I'm all for this opportunity. The only thing I'm concerned about is whether, this brings a cost to the agency that they cannot meet. And as we know, even for us here at the legislature, we don't broadcast our sessions on our website. It's something that is just, I guess, I don't know whether it's a technical or a cost thing, but we publish them via YouTube. So you can watch live on YouTube or of course on the television. But on the internet, it's on YouTube. And so we've adapted and used those formats. We've seen the governor, when she streams things live, it's on Facebook. And so as we get used to these types of technology, I think we're all adjusting, and we will continue to see which one works better for us and for different agencies. So I just want to give them that type of flexibility, and I have uploaded an amendment that would just change the mandate. Instead of, it will still be broadcast via video live stream applications, but I'm taking off, my proposal is to remove the words "on the official website of each respective agency or on a designated government channel." Not all agencies have access to government channels, and I think those come with increased costs. So to make this bill immediately available to every agency, I would like them to use whatever's available to them. Facebook is okay with me, if they are able to use that, or YouTube, or any other at cost. And of course, we're very much relying on OTEC to help these agencies and to get them up to speed immediately. So my amendment's been uploaded, is to remove the words "on the official website of each respective agency or on a designated government channel." So that's my first amendment, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Joanne Brown, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I mean, the amendment proffered by Speaker Terlahi certainly still is in line with what the objective is, but I would hope maybe if her amendment could be further amended to include, if they choose to put it, what platform they are going to put it on. I think that needs to be included in the notice so that the public will know, do you go to look at YouTube? Do I go look at the government channel, wherever it may be? Because having them simply put it through those means, but the public doesn't know where to go to see it, especially, with all the 50-plus government of Guam department and agencies. I know they don't all have boards and commissions, but we need to have a mechanism under which the public will know where to go to be able to watch, watch these meetings as they're happening. And that's the main point. With regards to the issue of cost, again, because the technology is now available in a way that it has never been available before, the opportunity is there if efforts are made by department or agencies to fulfill this mandate. And to me, as I mentioned, I think with all the expenditures government departments have, this should be at the top of the list of priorities, keeping the public informed. And I know it's going to be a learning process for some that have not had to go through this, but I wouldn't exempt their website. There are existing laws that do require every government agency to have a website. Some are very good in updating and having their website very active. Others are dormant. Some haven't even gone down that road. But I don't think that we should remove that responsibility from them in terms of what's already in law to require the public to be able to access the information or what ongoing activities are happening in those department or agencies. So I don't have any major objection, but I would like to further amend just to include that when they do publish their agenda, and there are set requirements in law of how those agendas and where those agendas are supposed to be published, that they identify the platform under which their meeting can be accessed so the public knows where to go to track down that particular meeting by whichever board or commission is having that meeting, on top of the Guam Legislature, of course, as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anybody else on the amendment? Anybody else on the amendment? Senator San Agustin, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do support the amendment, and the reason why I state that is because DOE is a very good example. They've been able to put it on different social media outlets. It's just a matter of now with this bill, it'll be able to help it carry it further and be able to officially just do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. And anyone else on the amendment as proffered by Speaker Terlahi? Anyone else? If not, Speaker Terlahi, would you like to close or call for?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to close on the amendment and offer an amendment to that amendment at the suggestion of the sponsor of the bill. So I would like to add it at the end of the paragraph after the word applications, as announced in notice of meeting. As announced in notice of meeting. If I could beg the indulgence of the body to do that without putting in writing.
On the amendment to the amendment, are there anyone wishing to speak? Is there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. On the amendment as amended, Speaker Terlahi, you still have the floor.
Yes, I'll waive closing on that amendment.
Say that again.
I will waive closing on the amendment.
Okay. Are there any objections to the amendment as amended by Speaker Therese Terlahi? Are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Speaker Terlahi, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make one additional point, and that is, so several years ago in my first term, I authored a bill that would mandate, I take it back. I did not author a bill. There was a law in place before I became a senator that mandated that Office of Technology was going to create a central government website that was going to, that all agencies could utilize to put up all notices so that the public doesn't have to look at every single agency's website to find out what's happening in a certain day. And that central website was going to tell us everything that's going on. OTEC had never done that. They had come before the legislature. When I became a senator, I asked them about this, and their answer was that it's much more complicated than we think it is, and it's, there are costs involved. And so we've been waiting for years for this central website just to give notice of the meetings. Now, this bill will require notices of the meetings and their agendas. So it adds a little bit more information, but I have great confidence that this is absolutely possible and that we should not wait any longer for this to be done. There should be a central website where all this information is located for the convenience of the public, including the notices and the agendas themselves. And the reason why I'm very confident that this is possible is because during the pandemic, the governor ordered the Attorney General's office to be that central website, to take care of posting all notices since they were waiving open government requirements. They were going to put up notices eventually. So they did, and they were very capable. It was a good website, and I used it myself often. So I just think the AGs has discontinued doing that, unfortunately. I wish they had continued, but so I am just going to put on the record that we expect this bill continues the expectation and the mandate that OTEC work with DOA, and they get that central website up, and that would be the perfect place to get these notices and the agendas, Madam Speaker. Thank you. And again, I hope my colleagues will support this bill as well.
Buen provecho, Speaker Terlahi. On the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? If not, Senator, I apologize. I'll entertain the legislative secretary and then Senator San Augustine. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I rise in full support of this bill. Anything to increase the transparency of our government and allow our people to participate, I think is a good step for us here in the legislature. And as many of our colleagues have said today, it's very helpful to all of us as we continue our jobs as policymakers to keep track and to have these things live streamed or broadcasted publicly is of great value. And you know, Madam Speaker, that I've also been pushing this branch to expand beyond our YouTube and government channel to also have a radio channel so those who don't have internet and cable can also listen in with what we're doing every day here in the branch. I do have one question for the author of the bill, if she will yield. I'm concerned that there is
no enactment date in the bill, so I want to know what kind of time frame we're giving to our agencies to procure equipment if it's needed, those who don't have the infrastructure and the technology right now. What kind of flexibility are we giving them to adapt to this legislation?
Thank you, Legislative Secretary. Senator Brown, would you like to yield to the question?
Certainly, Madam Speaker, thank you. I've not set a date. I mean, otherwise, if this becomes law, it would be automatic, but you are right. I mean, even though these laws have been in place with regards to notices, you know, I'm open. I think maybe, what, a month or two? I mean, these are things that probably should have already been done. I would not want an extended time frame because there's a tendency sometimes to have a lax in government. I mean, we could put and I hope nobody tries to slam anything down before it goes into effect. But you know, I think a 90-day period might be reasonable if we could look at the possibility of being able to do that. I would want to accelerate it. I mean, I don't want to wait too long for this process to get into place. I'd very much want our government agencies to prioritize, especially if it invalidates any action a board or commission takes, that they would prioritize at, you know, their next regular meeting to put this in place, particularly using these other platforms. I mean, the means are there now that was not available to us before. So I wouldn't want to see an extended time frame. Maybe, what, 30 days? I mean, I'd actually would prefer it to be immediate.
Secretary Shelton, does that suffice?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate that answer very much. I too don't want to see the delay of this bill being enacted, but I want to allow our agencies to be able to comply with the bill. And so as the discussion continues, I'll try to work on an amendment.
Secretary Shelton. Senator San Augustine, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of this bill. And as they mentioned, OTEC maybe has been dropping the ball, but you know what? We got a budget hearing coming up. As soon as I get the date and when we're going to do OTEC, we can ask that question. We can get an answer. And when we start talking about funding, we start saying, what have you done with the money you've got? That's number one. But then we'll worry about it. But I'm going to fully support this bill. And just for advice to everybody and to the people, GTA gives Channel 21 to the legislature as a public service. We also broadcast it free of charge and stream it on the channel. Additionally, we have a government channel which the government can avail or for public access separate from the legislative channel that the government can use anytime. We'll bring more information to the forefront, but I want to support this bill to start. DOE's been trying their best to broadcast everything, and we need to get everybody else to start broadcasting everything. Let's keep it as transparent as possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator San Augustine. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Clint Rigel, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just rise in support of this bill. I commend the author. I think this is a good bill. You know, with my background before entering into the legislature, of course, my background was in the media. And in the media, this is one of the things we always looked for is an increase in transparency. Specifically, one thing that I have encountered in my many years in the media is precisely addressed in this bill is the requirement that agendas be more specific in what's laid out on the agenda. And I've been to many, many meetings where one look at the agenda and you really don't have a clue of what they're going to be talking about in the meeting. And over the years, I noticed that it seemed like it became a way for them to sort of perhaps hide what was going to be discussed in the meeting, to not draw attention to the matter that was going to be discussed in the meeting. And I learned that over the years, and so I really do like this particular provision in this bill that requires more specificity in the agenda items so that the public will be aware of what exactly each board or commission is actually going to be discussing during their meeting. So with that, I just rise in the support of this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Rigel. Anyone else on the main motion? If Majority Leader, you are recognized at this time on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just going to proffer two amendments. The first amendment will be on the original Terlahi amendment, which was on page 2, lines 6 through 10, and just at the end of the sentence to add the words "and on agency website." That's the First Amendment.
On that amendment, as proffered by Majority Leader, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Okay, and then the Second Amendment is to add Section 6, and it just reads, "The act shall become effective 30 days after enactment."
On that amendment, does anyone wish to speak? If not, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill. This is, it really paves the way as we evolve into future generations wanting to become leaders, and so this is the medium that they look for to learn, and so I think this is a great opportunity to keep especially our youth involved in what is happening within our government.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Anyone else who wishes to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Brown, you may close now at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Certainly thank you to my colleagues and Speaker Terlahi and Senator Taitigui for their support as co-sponsors. I know it's going to be an additional requirement for Governor Guam agencies to meet the, certainly I'm hopeful that this bill will become law. But as I mentioned, I think the most important thing we can do is ensure that we have greater awareness and transparency. We use those words so frequently these days, but more so we need to put it into practice so that anyone, it could be Tan Marie at home, maybe she's there watching her TV, or some of them are even more proficient than some of us in social media and getting on the website and looking at YouTube and Yahoo and all these other wonderful things that we have available now that, a few years ago we were not as aware of. But it allows the opportunity more so now, more than ever, for members of our community to know what their government's doing. If they like what we're doing, they can let us know. If they don't like what we're doing, then by all means, they should and can have the ability to let us know. I think that's a very important part of having our government, is to have that level of awareness and accountability with our government and what we're doing. The technology is here to do it. It makes it possible. It does require more effort now for department and agencies to ensure that their agendas are public. As Senator Rangel had mentioned, even for the media, they can't be everywhere at one time. Some of these meetings might be happening simultaneously. But now they have the ability to cover it. They don't have to physically, like in the old days, you physically had to go to the location of where these meetings were happening. And, you only have so many reporters. Everybody can't be everywhere. But now they can simply get online and be able to keep track or write the stories or do the work that they need to do. And they're not limited by the physical space anymore. So more the reason we take this technology and incorporate it in our government. I don't want to mention everyone's name, but if there's no objection to my colleagues that are here, I'd like to include all the members of the legislature unless they have an objection of having their name included as co-sponsors. And I certainly thank my colleagues for their amendments into strengthening this bill. And thank all of you for your support in advance. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Brown. On the amendment to include all sponsors, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Brown on the motion to put into voting file. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As we've completed discussion, I'd like to just follow through my original motion to place this bill in third reading for voting. Thank you.
On the motion to place the bill 102-36CR into the voting file, third reading file, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we recess till tomorrow, 9 a.m.
On that motion, without any objections, motion carries.